Conservative pundit Michael Knowles went on Dave Rubin's show. Now, Michael Knowles is a guy who I've debated previously at Politicon. It was like a panel situation. It wasn't one-on-one, but there were some hilarious moments in that. In fact, David Pakman recently released a video. I think it was titled something like Why the Right Doesn't Want to Debate the Left. And there's all sorts of, left-wing commentators in there debating right-wingers. There's one clip of me debating Michael Knowles, and he said something along the lines of, like, I'm pro-life. And then I responded, oh, so you're against the death penalty. That's good to know. And Michael Knowles immediately was like, no, I'm pro the death penalty. And I was like, okay, so thank you for walking right into my trap. This is going to be really easy because you just contradicted yourself instantly. And there were other parts of it too. It was like, oh, I believe in due process. I was like, oh, so you're against Guantanamo Bay. Great. He was like, no, I'm for that. Okay, well, again, you contradicted yourself. These guys are amazing. I'm in favor of due process, but only for Americans? So anyway, it's easy to run circles around him. He's not that bright. That's my point. Here he is on Dave Rubin's show. And yet again, he's going to accidentally say the quiet part loud about the right.
Yes, we failed. We failed. Conservatives totally failed on this because what the left is offering a vision of society. It basically the radical left's vision of society is just the inverse of whatever the vision used to be. You know, in the 1950s, if you were a communist, you would be canceled. You would lose your career in Hollywood. You could be prosecuted. I mean, it was illegal under the Smith Act. Today, you'll be canceled if you're an anti-communist. Right? So it's just you'll still be canceled, but it's just the total flip of it. But they're actually putting forward that vision of society. What is the conservative vision on this? The conservative vision is to defend now, and this is only over the last 20 years or so, to defend free speech in the abstract, right? Or to defend freedom of belief in the abstract. It's always in the abstract. But they won't ever get down to the brass tacks of what should we say? What do we believe? What are we offering people other than nothing? And this is why on the occasions that Republicans have won elections in the last 20 years, all we've ever managed to do, almost without exception, is cut taxes a little bit and maybe cut regulation a little bit, but actually maybe not. And that's it. And so I guess the question you have to ask yourself is after the Reagan Revolution and even the Trump Revolution and the Gingrich Revolution, we won all these elections. Would you say the country today is more conservative, more free than it was 20 years ago? No way.
That is quite the admission. That's quite the admission. He says it straight up. Hey, we've been in power for a long time. Would you say the country is more conservative and more free than years ago? And he's like, no. Okay, so let me break this down. The government actually is very conservative. But correct, we are not more free. So you do the math on that. All these conservative policies, but you don't feel more free. Perhaps conservative policies don't really foster freedom in any meaningful sense of the word. Again, he's sort of admitting this. You know, yes, I'm dissecting it more, but he did say, would you say the country is more conservative and free than years ago? I would say, yes, the government is conservative. And correct, we're not more free than we were years ago. Definitely not. We're in a pretty horrendous situation right now. So the policies of the country, we're still in many ways in the Reagan era. There's now been a dash of a throwback to the FDR era, just the tiniest bit with the stimulus checks and with the unemployment assistance. But that's just the tiniest dash. Whereas we're still 90% in the Reagan era, in the neoliberal era. And again, it was started by Reagan. It was continued, including under Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, who had the opportunity to break free from that, and they didn't. So, I mean, again, that is a pretty stunning admission, because the government is super conservative. We're not more free. We're actually fucked. And I haven't said anything yet about the people. The actual people, their opinions are left. But the government is conservative, so it's not representative of the people. I'll get back to that point. So, I like how he says at the beginning, in the 1950s, if you were a communist, you were canceled and sometimes prosecuted. And he sounds like he's yearning for those days back. Right? Am I wrong? Am I misreading that? You go back and watch it again. It sounds like when he's talking about it, he's like, damn, weren't those the good old days? Back in the day, in the 1950s, if you were a communist, you were canceled and sometimes prosecuted under the Smith Act. And now he says you're canceled if you're an anti-communist. Really? How are you canceled if you're an anti-communist? Has anybody been fired because they're not a communist? Has anybody been prosecuted because they're not a communist? That's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and it's completely counterfactual. But it does seem like he's yearning for the McCarthy days. And by the way, there's a lot of modern McCarthyism on the left where, there's accusations of you're a puppet to Russia, you're funded by Russia or whatever. So there is a version of modern day McCarthyism, but he seems like he's jealous of the days when we could just lock up communists. Then he goes on to explain, what have the conservatives offered us? The conservatives have only really offered us tax cuts and some deregulation. So, correct, they've only offered us tax cuts for the rich, to be clear. And yeah, they've offered us deregulation, like deregulating Wall Street, which leads to more greed and more recklessness and more market crashes. Deregulating the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which allows big financial institutions to rip off Americans to the tune of billions of dollars. So yes, that is what the conservatives stand for. He's right about that. Tax cuts for the rich and deregulation. And those things are horrendous. Horrendous. Some of the biggest policy mistakes in decades. Now, he also says, us conservatives also stand for free speech in the abstract. No, you don't. You don't even stand for it in the abstract. There's over 30 states where Republicans are passing anti-protest laws, which is deeply against the First Amendment and freedom of speech and free expression. There's conservative states that are in favor of criminalizing BDS, again, deeply against the First Amendment and free speech. There's the thing going on this week with Gwen Berry, who turned away from the American flag during, she's an athlete and she's going to be in the Olympics. She turned away from the American flag when she came in third. And conservatives are calling for her to get kicked off the Olympic team. That's you not believing in free speech and free expression. Lil Nas X with the Satan shoe, people wanted him to be canceled for that. That's not you believing in free speech or free expression. That's you guys being politically correct in your own sense. So I don't agree with that part about free speech in the abstract. And then, of course, he says early on, well, the left offers a vision of society and the right doesn't. So let me break that down. The grassroots left does offer a vision of society, and it's a good one. The grassroots left wants universal health care, universal college, unionization, higher wages, more democracy in the workplace, an end to climate change, an end to wars. So yes, the grassroots left does have a vision, and it's a good vision, and it sells. You could argue, you can make a different argument when it comes to social issues and cancel culture and things of that nature. Fair enough. But the elected leaders of the left, I actually disagree with him. They don't have a vision. I can't name... Bernie had a vision, but even now he's being much more of a partisan Democrat, falling in line with Biden and not as aggressive on the things that he always cared about. So I would argue the elected left doesn't have a vision. The grassroots left does have a vision. Now on the Republican side, no, the elected right does have a vision, and it's tax cuts for the wealthy and deregulation, as you already laid out. It's that mixed with a whole bunch of culture war bullshit. But it's interesting because his admission is, hey, we're not really better off right now. And we haven't really increased freedom in any meaningful sense. Yes, exactly. You want to know how you increase freedom and human potential? You increase it by taking the basics off the table. So are you really free in any meaningful sense if you can go bankrupt for medical bills? I don't think you are. Are you really free in any meaningful sense if in this country young people have accrued $1.7 trillion with a T of student loan debt? Are you really free in any meaningful sense when you got to pay off your student loans into your 50s? Are you? Are you really free in any meaningful sense if you work for a wage that isn't a living wage? And so you work full time, you're not lazy, you have no moral character failing, but you still can't pay the bills. Are you really free in any meaningful sense? So I submit to you the way to increase human freedom and potential is to move closer to social democracy or socialism, a form of market socialism, for example. I mean, that's libertarian socialism, you could say. This is how you increase freedom in a meaningful sense, where you give people better wages, you give people more leisure time, more control of their own lives. And listen, again, Michael Knowles is admitting the most important part. He's like, yeah, the right, they've pushed for tax cuts. Again, for the rich. He doesn't say that, but I'm saying that because it's true. It's tax cuts for the rich and it's deregulation. He says sometimes. No, he's right. It's pretty much all the time. Tax cuts for the rich and deregulation, and hey, everybody's still sort of screwed. Correct, Michael, which is why neoliberalism and neoconservatism, by the way, the endless wars, this is not the answer. This is not the answer. You're increasing human misery and suffering and poverty and degradation. The real answer is to have more of a social democratic system that will increase freedom. But yes, the elected right, they do have a vision, and it's a bad vision. So he pretty much says the quiet part loud here, doesn't he? He pretty much says the quiet part loud. Hey, we've been in control for a long time, and things aren't getting better. That's exactly the point. So you shouldn't be in control. We should end the Reagan era, and we should start an all-out new FDR-type era. Social democratic era. The idea that government can be a force for good and can help people and can be representative of the will of the people. That's what we need to do.